Okay, this week's discussion, we will be evaluating positive and negative arguments as it relates to moral subjectivism. In a nutshell, moral subjectivism is the concept that all moral positions are equally good because ethics is just a matter of opinion. Um, in other words, what you view is right or wrong, it's your opinion. And one great example is the title of the chapter, Why Ethics Isn't Ice Cream. Um, the professor used an illustration to kind of demonstrate this. Even though all of us will have different an opinion when it comes to our favorite ice cream, that doesn't necessarily mean that the way we approach what's right or what's wrong should be strictly based on our opinion. We're going to look at two arguments that this book presents. One is the negative argument, not negative argument, and the other one is a positive argument. People sometimes conclude that because ethical questions cannot be empirically proven, that we should just kind of look at it as a perspective, kind of view it as a point of view, and it's subjective to change based on the individual. However, negative argument rejects that ethic is completely subjective because beliefs are a mindset. What you believe is just in your mind. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the reality. So if you're making a decision based on what you believe and you feel that that's right, it doesn't automatically make it right because our belief is in our mind. It's not necessarily what our reality is. It's a little bit vague in a way because it's kind of hard to explain it. But I think that, in my opinion, what this is getting at is just because you think something is right or you think you made the most optimal decision when it comes to a particular moral issue doesn't necessarily mean that that is the case because the reality of that decision is far different from your belief of that decision. So again, as we transition into kind of comparing these two arguments from your negative argument to a positive argument, you kind of see where the shift is. In the positive argument, what it essentially says that the positive argument rejects moral subjectivism and endorses moral objectivism, which is a view that ethical questions have answers that doesn't necessarily depend on the individual. In other words, if you were to approach any maybe tough decision or issue and you're trying to figure out is this right or wrong, there is a correct answer to that. It doesn't necessarily mean that your answers could be correct. And this kind of comes from how we use two particular terms, and those terms are should and ought. When we look at those, we kind of get into prescriptive versus predictive. The use of should and ought can be used in a way that indicates something that's both expected for the future and to indicate a moral obligation. I think example is you should brush your teeth every morning implies that by doing so you can possibly avoid having gum disease. You ought to brush your teeth every morning implies that it's morally it's imperative that you do this action. I think this kind of ties back to the original argument, whether something is subjective or not. Just because someone might feel like you should do something doesn't necessarily imply that that particular action or that particular decision is what you ought to do. But we have to be very careful because, yes, even philosophers, the experiences will make your decision somewhat biased. But I think in understanding that kind of leaves room for you to grow mentally instead of just feeling like, oh, my position is my position, and because I feel this way, therefore it's right. I think that's where moral subjectivism cannot be applied effectively. So, in a nutshell, moral subjectivism in some cases can make sense, but in other cases it simply just doesn't apply. Thank you.